So I'm going to give a talk today. What a cool day, by the way. My talk is about Agile ventures, crowdsourced learning, and software development as part of a distributed team. And who am I? My name is Matthew Ryder. I work in support for Agile Ventures, and I started programming a year ago, so I'm a newbie. And this is my first talk, so I'm a talk virgin, so yeah, be easy on me. So how many people here have given a talk at a conference before? Okay, quite a few people. And how many people have been programming for less than a year? Right, a couple people, I think. Or he's asking a question for you to raise your hand as well, perhaps. And how many people have been programming for more than 5 years? Wow, all right. More than 10 years? More than 25 years? Wow. All right, cool. So I'm 34 years old, and so I guess I kind of got a late start, it seems, in programming. And, you know, giving a talk here at a tech conference, I feel like I should explain myself why it took me so long to start programming. So I guess like I had like preconceptions about how there would be so much competition and that kind of thing, and it just took me a while to actually get started and realize that I really love it. And I was actually, I've been an English teacher here in Brazil for 5 years, and I was actually, at the time, giving an English class and talking about my plans of going back to university and studying something really boring that I probably wouldn't have enjoyed. And my friend said, well, why don't you study programming and see if you like it? What's the worst that could happen? And so I said, yeah, all right, I'll do that. And I ended up falling in love. So one of the things I did was I tried learning by myself, you know, in my room with my computer, and that was working. I was learning some stuff, but it was kind of frustrating as well, and trying to reach out to your friends who are programmers and be like, hey, you know, do you have extra time for, you know, answering some newbie questions? And, you know, they answered some questions, but at the same time, you know, programmers are busy people and don't have lots of time for answering newbie questions. So yeah, that's a little bit about me, and that's kind of what led me to becoming a pair programming enthusiast, is that whole experience of struggling to learn alone and wanting to be able to learn in a group and to pass on knowledge and to help other people who are coming on board. I work on a distributed team, so I do everything remotely, and I work in my pajamas most of the time, and that's really cool. I need to leave the house and commute an hour and a half on Brazilian public transportation to get to work. And that's awesome. I'm also a vegan, and I'm a home brewer. So my wife and I, we brew beer in Floripa, where I live. For those of you, how many people are here are not from Brazil? Nobody. All right, cool. So I won't explain what Florianopolis is then. So this is a little bit of my outline. I added this actually afterwards, after a dry run where someone suggested that I give a little bit of an outline of what I was going to talk about. So I'm going to first start talking about Agile Ventures and who we are. Then I'm going to talk about what crowdsourced learning is, for those of you who are not familiar. Talk a little bit about our software development, and then I'm going to jump into talking about Dockerizing of the main site, some issues, successes, and questions. So Agile Ventures, there's a trailing closing parentheses there. But yeah, so Agile Ventures is a site that was born out of a Berkeley MOOC, which, if you don't know what that is a massive online open course. And they were doing the course, and a group of people realized that the course at Berkeley actually involved doing a project, and when you're doing it online, there's no project. So they got together and started pair programming and started creating some projects to practice what they were learning. So one of the things we support is daily Scrums. For those of you who participate in daily Scrums, I know some of you are probably rolling your eyes like, daily Scrum? Why daily? Why does it have to be daily? Or yeah, I think everyone here probably knows what Scrums are. Some people call them stand-ups, but it's a short little 15-minute talk where we can check in with people and talk about what we've been doing, what we're planning on doing, and anything that's blocking us. So that's really amazing, and it's like how I got into Agile Ventures as a volunteer was going to those scrums and talking to them and like, oh, I'm building this side project for my wife's business so she can organize her business, and I'm not understanding what's going on with Rails associations, and can you listen to me and help me out? And they would provide a couple minutes of did you think about it like this, and draw a couple diagrams, and that was really helpful for me. And now I'm helping to organize those on a daily basis. We do an agile approach to software development, which probably I don't know. I think probably a lot of people here, it seems like people here are programmers, so probably know what that is. But it's a characteristic of having short life cycles in between interactions with the client, so that you don't spend 2 years developing something and then go to the client and the client says, actually, that's not what I want. But you told me 2 years ago that's what you want. Yeah, I know I did, but things change and it's not what I want. So we support an agile approach. It's an official UK charity, so it's a non-for-profit organization. It's not a company. Not that there's anything wrong with being companies, but it is an official UK charity, and it's made up of all volunteers, which has some challenges involved in that I'll get into. And we promote professional development, so people who are new to programming, people who are changing their focus and doing a different language, or who want to have a chance at being a project manager and showing that they can successfully manage a distributed team. We provide all that, a space for all those people. We do daily pair programming. I'm always organizing pair programming sessions on different things, different languages, different open source projects, and getting other people involved and sharing that knowledge. And a little bit about crowdsourced learning. So how many people have heard of crowdsourced learning? No? Crowdsourcing? Crowdsourcing, people have heard of, right? Yeah, cool. So it's a similar concept. So it's a characteristic of like sharing our experiences, right? And we can learn something, 2 or more people deciding to learn something or take on a task, and taking on asymmetric roles in doing that, so that we can combine together to actually use our different levels of experience to be able to tackle a common task. And it's also involves peer interaction, so people are meeting up, in our case remotely, and evaluating each other's work and cooperating with each other. So different from individualistic type learning, where the goal is to get the best grade in the class or things like this. Crowdsourced learning, the goal is not only your personal learning, but also the learning of the group as a whole. And it's very learner-centered. So one of the ways that we promote that is by switching drivers, so it's not always the teacher there doing the programming and people just listening. It's actually people getting involved and being able to drive the development of the software as well. Speaking of software development, so in the 5 years that Agile Ventures has been an organization, there's been hundreds of open source nonprofit projects that have come in and made their mark on Agile Ventures. And a couple of the paying clients at the moment are NHS Wiki, which NHS is the National Health Service, which is a UK-based public health initiative that people may or may not have heard of. And they have a Wikipedia that they have asked us to create for them and maintain as part of the Healthy London Partnership, which focuses on social prescribing. Have people heard of social prescribing here? Social prescribing? No? Cool. So social prescribing is like the radical idea that our health is more than just going to doctors and taking medicine, but actually involves a holistic view where our mental health and our social interactions and taking care of ourselves in a holistic way is also involved. And so we promote this. And also the Anthony Powell Society is another one of our playing clients. This is just a look at what the Healthy London Partnership Wiki looks like at the moment. And the Anthony Powell Society. We have 11 more active projects at the moment. So we've had hundreds, and it's kind of been whittled down to the ones that are actually people who are doing work on every week, or thereabouts. Are 11, which you have some of the icons here of the different ones we have. So you can see there as well. We have the Wiki education dashboard is one as well, and we have this public employment system. Training system, that helps people in Detroit, Michigan to be able to find opportunities for employment. So we work with lots of different types of languages. Ruby on Rails is the base, has the most projects have Ruby on Rails, but we also play with Ruby and Ethereum and Python, JavaScript and React, EmberJS. So we're lots of different languages that we're programming in and have open source projects on. And we're part of a distributed team, which I've already said. So we have people from all 7 continents. Actually, that's not true. We don't have from Antarctica. So, yeah. But if you know anyone there, that would be great. We have more than 8,900 people have become volunteers in the 5 years. So almost 9,000 people have come in and in some way contributed to our community. And we have all of our meetings and our pairing sessions are recorded. So I'm not sure how people feel about that. Different people have different opinions on that and the privacy involved in that. And we do have people's consents that they are going to be recorded. And it's one of the tools that we use as part of a remote team to be able to, if a person can't make a meeting for some reason, they can go back and watch the video. Or if we're in a pairing session and, there's lots of knowledge that's thrown around and you really get something and then you actually go to work on it later and you realize that you don't really don't remember or didn't really understand the way you thought you did, and you can go back and you can watch that and it helps to support learning. And one of the things about working remotely, how many people here actually work remotely? Okay, so quite a few. Cool. Yeah, working remotely is awesome, right? So one of the things is that you don't have that, and something I thought about is that, especially for a junior programmer like myself, it's really nice to be able to have people that you can, see at the water cooler, around the water cooler, as they say, and, bother them with newbie questions and stuff and have that support. And this is something that, you don't have when you work remotely, right? So this is another way that we can help out with that, So website 1 is one of the open source projects and is actually just a pseudonym for Agile Ventures. It's the actual site where people go when they want to sign up for the Agile Ventures to become a volunteer to find out about the different events and projects. This is what it looks like at the moment. Actually, we're doing a vanity experiment, and people know what a vanity experiment is. The gem vanity for Rails. No. It's A/B testing. It's where half the people see one site and the other half see the other site, and then you kind of track what's going on, how people interact with it, and who signs up, who doesn't, and all that kind of stuff. So this is one of the actual home pages. This is just a little bit about what type of membership you can have at Agile Ventures. So we do have free tier membership, which is how I came in, and with that you get access to the Slack channel, which is a really active Slack channel that you can go there and you have a tech talk, for example. If you're having problems, you're running some bugs in your code and you're Googling it and you can't find the answer, and you've spent days on it or hours on it or whatever, and you need some help, you can go there and you can put that there. You have access to the daily Scrums, so you can interact, face to face with people over video about and hear what they're up to and get involved with the projects. One of those 11 open source projects, or maybe you find some inactive project that you want to start back up again, and you want to get other people, other volunteers to help you out on. You feel free to do that. If anyone here, if you have an open source project that is open source, and is free or non-profit, feel free to go there and sign up and put the project there and start organizing people to help you out on it. And then we also do have other tiers as well, like premium and premium mob, which give you premium face-to-face, which are paid, and that you can actually get further levels of support from senior developers. So most of you are already senior developers, but you get what I mean. So like I just already talked about the Slack. One of the things that the premium mobs that's really cool that I participate in and help to organize is our mobbing sessions. So I'm not sure if that's like a term that is well known or if that's like kind of a term we throw around, but it's like pair programming, but with more than 2 people. So 3 or more people, I guess. If people show up, sometimes we call it a mobbing session and only 2 people or only 1 person shows up, and then it turns into a pairing session. But we actually share a workspace, through C9 is a tool that we use a lot to help with developing code in a distributed team. And what we can do is because we're sharing a workspace, we can switch drivers and we can have space for people to ask questions, and we can dive into different languages that maybe we haven't worked in professionally. So we have, I've already named some of them. We have a deep learning mob as well, which I was listening to the deep learning talk earlier today and not understanding anything and wondering why I haven't spent more time in the deep learning mob. But yeah, so this here is a picture of a site. This was the first open source project that I got involved with Agile, well, in general, actually. It's called Rundfunk mit Bestimmungen, I think. Are there any German speakers in the crowd today? German speakers? No? Okay, cool, yeah. Anyways, I'm sure I murdered that pronunciation, but this is RFM, we call it for short. And what this site does is it helps to promote democracy, and it helps to promote in public broadcasting. So in Germany, everyone has to pay a certain fee for public broadcasting, whether they have a TV or a radio or they want to or they don't want to. Everyone has to pay, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It does have some benefits. Like here, you don't really have public broadcasting, and so yeah, people like Global who control all of the narrative, which is not good for democracy. But also, there's no oversight for this, so people don't have a choice on where this money is getting spent. So as you can imagine, it's mostly spent on sports, which I like sports, but people should have a voice in where their money is getting spent. So this was the first project I got involved with. This is the first feature that I helped to develop, which allows people to be able to, if they choose to be able to add their gender to help out with demographic, and for the data to be representative. So when we talk to journalists and they say, well, is the data representative? We can say, yes, actually it is. Cool. So now how am I doing? Lots of time. Okay, cool. So we're going to talk a little bit about the Dockerization of Website 1. So I was listening to the Docker talk a little bit before this, and I'm not an expert at Docker. I'm not an expert at anything. I've only been programming for a year. So it's not about that, but it's about this journey that we went on as a group of a distributed team and a group of volunteers, and contributing to open source. So this came about because of a couple different reasons. So one of the reasons is that we were onboarding lots of new volunteers who are getting set up with the project, and one of the good things about Docker is that you kind of don't have to worry about, does the person have the same operating system I have? Does the person have all the dependencies that are needed for my project installed already? Do I need to send like a big README with them telling them everything that they need to get set up? You can just, if you have Docker and Docker Compose installed, or there's other ways as well, but in this case, Docker and Docker Compose installed, then you can just like run the command, and after some hours, then it will be up and working, and everyone's happy. So yeah, we were having issues with a particular gem that I'm going to talk about in a minute. So we started thinking about that. Yeah, I guess I'm going to talk about it now. Capybara-webkit was the gem. Not sure, have people heard of Capybara-webkit? Anybody like to come to the stage and explain what Capybara-webkit is and what it does? No? Okay. Well, Capybara-webkit is for driving our tests. It's a driver, and yeah, people were getting stuck on this, and we're like, okay, well, people have got stuck on this before, and we have this like GitHub gist that tells people how to get past it, and so we were passing that to people, and then it wasn't working, and it involved like installing the latest version of Qt5 and all this kind of stuff, some dependencies, and they weren't getting past it, and then some people were being told that they needed a new version of Xcode. These are Mac users that were having an issue there. I'm a Linux user, so my knowledge of Mac is somewhat limited, and yeah, so we're having an issue getting people past getting them to be able to bundle install the gems from the gem file in the Rails application, and also right before this, where Ruby Floripa, shout out to all my Ruby Floripa friends out there. Yeah, the Ruby Floripa, we were talking about having an English hack night. So we could get together and just nerd out and speak in English, which I think everyone here would be a huge fan of. So yeah, and the first night, you can see there in the slide on the left, we had the first night, we had like, you probably can't read what that says, right? Especially the people in the back. But basically it was voted overwhelmingly that people were like, yes, let's work on open source projects. And that was really cool for me, because I was like, oh, well, actually, I have an open source project I'm pairing on at the moment, and let's do it. And what we found was that even people that, that have, were able to get past the capybara-webkit. Maybe they didn't have the database, like the Postgres database, and then it was like, do we really want to go through like everybody getting everything installed, before we start working on it, or is there another way, like for example Dockerizing it? And there was energy in the group and said, yeah, let's Dockerize it. That sounds like a great idea. So that's what we decided to do. Yeah, I feel like I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but just to say that Docker is really cool. And if hopefully you listen to the Docker talk, if not, yeah, there's the video and stuff as well. But this just shows a little bit of the difference between, a traditional VM, a virtual machine, and Docker. Whereas you have like, you don't have to worry about having a complete operating system. You can like install the operating system in the container, and then you can just use the containers. So the first pairing session was on a Sunday. I remember it well because it was a Sunday. I remember that. And it was, I guess, a couple days before the English Hack Night, and we started working on it, and we found these documentation here on Docker Docs about like getting started on a Rails app, which was extremely helpful for me. And there's lots of text up there. I don't know if you can see it or not, but basically we got it working locally on my machine, and it was like, well, that was really easy. What's the big deal, And so that was really awesome. We were all celebrating and everything, having a laugh about how easy it was. But what we failed to do was to test it on other machines and in other environments. So I guess I did hear. Don't know this. I forget the name of the guy that was talking about Docker before, but he was saying like one of the good things is like once if it's working for you, then you can be sure it's working for other people. Well, because we were trying to use Docker to develop locally, that's not necessarily true in our case, right? Because I'll get into that a little bit more later, but we failed to test on different operating systems, and like it brought up this question for me that like is it possible to write a test that like simulates people trying on a Windows machine, for example, or do I just need to actually have a virtual box with a Windows machine that I actually go there and run the command and watch it fail or watch it pass and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, everyone was happy, and we got it merged into the develop bench 2 days later, and then then hold on. So there's people have seen Docker files here, probably. Yes, Docker files. Is a Docker file? Oh, you've seen it? Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. Do you want to explain what the? You're good. I guess I won't go too much into it, but just to say that, like, on line 1 there, which probably everyone here can see line 1, right, is like pulling in the latest image from Ruby, the 2.5, which was the first thing that we ran into, is that we weren't actually, the official Ruby image for 2.5 uses Ruby 2.5.1, which we had Ruby 2.5.0. So I needed to talk to the project manager and be like, hey, you know, can we upgrade the whole project to 2.5.1 as long as the tests are still passing and all that kind of stuff? And he said, yeah, that's cool. So that was nice, because otherwise we would have needed to write a lot of code ourselves instead of just having all this stuff for free. And like, if you go to the Ruby 2.5, maybe you have already, but they have lots of really cool code there that we just get for free, and that allows us to use things like apt-get, for example, because it installs Ubuntu. We're also installing Node.js for Rails and copying over the gem files. Those of you who have written lots of Docker files, maybe you see some issues with this. Maybe not. I don't know. Depends on the project, I guess, and the needs of the project. But it was actually not as complete as we thought it was. So, first bugs that we encountered. So I guess like a day later or 2 days later, we encountered a bug that as we were following the tutorial, they asked us to change our database.yaml and add the host DB, which points the Docker inside the container to where you want to be visiting the browser. The only thing is that broke things for people who want to develop locally. So I haven't used Docker to develop locally. I prefer to just use my Linux and develop. So I pulled down the latest changes, because again it had been merged into develop, and tried to go to local hosts in the browser to connect to the local server there, and yeah, it wouldn't let me. So we ended up getting past this by adding, some environment variables and adding this environment DB host to our Docker Compose. And then came English Hack Night. So we found the bug like right as we were going into English Hack Night, but then we had the English Hack Night, which was really cool. And we spent some time getting everyone set up, but it was pretty easy if anyone's gotten set up with Docker before. It doesn't really take a lot to get set up with Docker and Docker Compose. So that was cool. And then we had realized that we were bundle installing things, but we weren't installing our node dependencies. So npm, I think people are familiar here with npm. Yes, especially those who've been programming for 25 years. But if you're not, it's a node package manager. Like bundle is for Rails, npm is for Node. And yeah, then also as well, Phantom.js. We hadn't installed Phantom.js as part of our Docker file. And so what this means is that like when we were able to run the tests, but it actually installed Phantom.js before it ran the test suite, which I thought was pretty cool, that it was intuitive enough to realize like, this guy must be a newbie, and he forgot to install the Phantom.js globally, and just actually installed it. I could imagine it just horribly breaking and saying like, go back to your tutorial and ask what's going on there. But it didn't do that. It actually installed it, but the issue with that is that if you need to install Phantom.js every time you run every single test, that's not really sustainable. So then we also needed to update the dependencies and copy them over. So this is what we started doing in the English Hack Night, where we line 4 there, which you probably can't see, but there that's green. We said like, okay, npm install npm globally, and then we said npm install Phantom.js. And when it got to line 5, the bottom of the first green, it said npm can't be found, or something similar to that I didn't put in my slides, but it was like, don't know what you're talking about, mate. And so then we did a little bit of research during the Hack Night and stuff, and we came up with this, where we're like curling in this node source from the node source. And then that got us past that, and we were able to npm install our dependencies. Then also we need to modify the Docker file to copy over our package.json and our package.lock.json, because that just makes sense. If you're going to copy over your gem file, why aren't you copying over your package as well? So then the following days, this is Florianopolis, by the way. Has everyone here been to Florianopolis? Yes? Yeah, Florianopolis is awesome. Yeah. If you haven't been yet, you should give yourself a vacation and go there, especially those of you who work remotely, because you can just keep working if you want. So yeah, the following days we created some scripts, and when I say we, that's the thing I want to focus on here, is that at the English Hack Night we had about 7 or 8 people, I think, that were jumping in and getting involved, and some people were calling pizza and getting that organized, and some people were jumping in and writing some code, and other people were helping some other people get set up on their machines, and then afterwards other people were helping to write scripts so that we could get that set up, and updating readmes, and it really was a group effort on this, and this is what we came up with. This is our script. So we're basically we have a setup script, which is like, so when we left the Hack Night, it wasn't actually working. It was working on my machine, and this is what I said when I said it earlier. We didn't test it on other people's machines. I guess maybe a little bit inexplicably, I do have a theory that I can throw out there, and you can come talk to me afterwards and tell me if that makes sense or not. But I think because I had already gotten set up on the project and I had already installed the dependencies, it wasn't airing out on that point, the JavaScript dependencies. But for other people, they hadn't yet. They were just new to the project and we were trying to do it, and then it wasn't working. But because they had already tried, then when we had a working solution, they still weren't able to get it working because they had some volumes, and they had pre-built stuff, and some things were using caches and all that kind of stuff. So we built this setup script, which basically says remove all the images, all the volumes, all the orphans. I'm not really sure. I need to talk to my friend there about what the orphans are and why they need to be removed. But remove everything basically, and build it and force it to remove everything again, and don't use caches, and just start from scratch, right? And then also, to run commands to create the database, to migrate the database, and to seed the database. And then the stop and start script I put there, but nothing really exciting, just powering down the stuff and powering it back up again. This is the first README as well, which is important contribution as well. Contributing to open source is not just about coding. It's contributing in lots of different ways. Lots of debugging, writing code, helping out with documentation and all that kind of stuff. I think a lot of times people come in and they just I want to code, and it's cool. Everyone wants to code, and that's great, and we'll all have opportunities to code and everything like that. But if you have an opportunity to contribute to open source in any way, I think that's great. Some stuff about lessons learned and stuff. So we were ready to put in the second PR, and what happened was that in my haste to create a branch that we could push up to the Ruby Floripa repo that we could give people access to push to and be able to contribute to, I created a branch there on my local machine, and I didn't pay attention to the fact that I was already on a separate branch, right? So I put this this Git branch tree, and this is what it should look like, right? That's that blue, light blue, teal, whatever that color is the master we use develop for this. But you can see how they all come from develop in our case, and then they go back to develop, and they come from develop, and you're all familiar with that. Well, what I had done is I had gone from a different branch, and so it's difficult to see, I know, but there on the left side you can see all those other commits have absolutely nothing to do with the Dockerization of the website, and so should not be part of the PR, right? So yeah, in the end, like, you know, worked through some different solutions and stuff, but in the end we basically just squashed the commits, and you know, that's really sad for me. That's why I have this maybe a little bit of overreaction, this crying face, but it was sad for me because, you know, there's lots of people who are committing and, you know, and contributing, and you know, you don't want to have to squash that and just have one commit with your name. But I did, it was a learning experience as well. I learned how you can give people credit as like a co-author on a commit, so that's cool. And also, you know, just to make sure that they're making branches from the place you think you're making it from. So yeah, then we ran into some Windows issues. We had a developer who's part of Agile Ventures who has a Windows machine, and he spun it up and wasn't working for him. It was getting the same errors that we were getting before that we thought we had got past, where it's like, you know, searching for end progress, and I'm not really exactly even sure what end progress is. If you know what end progress is, that would be cool if you could tell me. It's something to do with JavaScript and showing the users some feedback when things are loading, something like that, I think. But anyways, it wasn't finding, it wasn't correctly running this post install script that we have as part of our npm install. So this is you know, an exciting look at our scripts copy JavaScript dependencies file, which does exactly what you think it does, and yeah, it copies over the JavaScript to our vendor assets JavaScript file folder, so that they can be found. So yeah, and sorry, going back, the problem with that was that, you know, he surmised and was that because this is a script, like, there's difference in like DOS to Unix line endings, and so we had to. I didn't put a picture of it, but we had to change our Docker file to install DOS to Unix and to actually run that so that it would copy over these files correctly. So then we ran into some issues with volumes. So we have this here, which we had, one of the volunteers had, you know, in trying to help out with the workflow, had added it like this with web volume. And what we found is that when we were actually like trying to use this for local development, we would make like some innocuous change to some page, like to the header, for example, and Docker wasn't actually watching that. So we would need to like stop the server and then start it again, and it still wasn't, like, the change still wasn't being reflected, and then like we really need to rebuild the whole thing just to, you know, just to mimic this change. And, you know, obviously that makes like using it for local development you know, impossible. So yep, that's what it was looking like, and then we changed it back to where it was, where you just put a period there, and that just tells Docker to watch everything in the local files and have those being reflected. Obviously, with dependencies, you still need to install the dependencies if there have been changes to those. So yeah, Docker instance, yeah. So then having fixed those issues, we are kind of like, again, in celebration mode, like it's working, and the people who are trying to contribute are in there, and they're contributing, and everyone's having fun. You know, for me, like, you know, I still am not 100% fan of using it for local development, because it does take longer. And, you know, there were some pairing sessions that I was like, you know, trying to like suggest like, hey, you know, do you want to get that whole Docker thing up and running and make sure everything's okay and install the dependencies and all that kind of stuff, and then we can start the pairing session, because, you know, 1 hour is a short period of time to be able to jump into some things and get stuff done. So there was that, but everything was working. And then we ran into another issue. So yeah, I don't know if I'm expressing the pain that that I went through during this, but, you know, it was difficult, you know, to just learning about it and trying to get past these issues. And this issue that we ran into was that basically when we pulled changes from develop, we started getting these rack timeout issues. Has anyone seen this before? I don't know if you can read what it says. This would be familiar, I'm sure, to people who have done Ruby on Rails development. But this is what a rack timeout issue looks like. And basically, I don't think you can read. It says the request ran for longer than 15,000 milliseconds. So I was talking to our friend that gave the AMP talk earlier about how it would be nice to actually look at this site and try to make it more performant, so we're not running into these issues, especially on production. But we were getting to this place, and then we were looking for answers and trying to work past it, and just not really getting anywhere, and kind of beating our heads against the wall, and this kind of thing. And this ended up being the fix. It's kind of a dirty workaround, but we added an environment variable that's like just set the rack timeout to 200 million billion milliseconds, and so we don't have to deal with this in development, because actually we don't care if it takes a little bit longer for it to, not that we don't care, but we don't want to be stopped by developing because it takes a little bit longer than we were thinking it should to actually load. So yeah, I mean, we had these pairing sessions that were like derailed, by this, where we had like, let's pair for 1 hour on this particular issue on GitHub, and let's, get a PR put in, and then we just spent the entire hour like trying to, what if you do Docker compose down -v and get rid of the volumes, and then you rebuild again, and then what if you run the setup script again, and all these kind of things, and and then one of the volunteers said to me, well, why don't you think about taking the issue and putting it there on Tech Talk? Maybe someone has an answer to it. So I need to get better at asking for help like that, instead of just throwing hours at it and hoping I find the answer myself. But basically we got past it. So the other thing that it made me question is the motives for wanting to Dockerize it in the first place, and one of those had to do with this capybara-webkit. So I started having a closer look at the code base and saying where are we using this WebKit? I want to understand, why do we need this? It's causing problems for people getting set up, and it's taking time and energy, and we even have documentation that someone wrote, and we need to update and all this kind of stuff. Why are we using this? And then I realized that actually we're not using it anywhere that I could find in the site, and why is it there? And so I said, I'm just going to remove it, as you do when you don't understand code, just remove it. And so that actually hasn't impacted anything that I can tell at the moment. So we were able to run the test, and no failures and that kind of stuff. And yeah, so I mean, potentially something is going to break horribly, but up to the moment it seems like we've kind of moved to a different driver, and we're not using it anymore. And it's one of the other things to highlight about working with all volunteers. Those of you who work remotely, do you work with all volunteers, or do you work with people who are paid to be in those positions and are there for longer periods of time? Sorry, that was not a yes or no question. So raise your hand if you work with all volunteers. Okay, so that's another thing, is that you can't spend time doing this and then the person's not there tomorrow, or you have lots of people contributing and things change, and it's more difficult to catch it when when those are the conditions that you're working with. So yeah, so just a bit of a retro. Yeah, the cool things about it is there was dozens of volunteers involved to make this a reality. It was really cool. I do question if it was more trouble than it was worth, because especially since it seems like that's not exactly really what people use Docker for, is to develop locally. I know I have read some articles, pros and cons of it and that kind of thing. Some people saying they tried it and they just gave up and it wasn't worth it and all this kind of stuff, and discouraging people from doing it. But it's an open question for me. But it was a good experience to help organize this, and to get people to actually be able to contribute to the project. Yeah, so there's my Homer Simpson thinking about things. Those of you who are more experienced in Docker, let's talk. What do you think? I mean, maybe this is just what are you talking about? Why are you using Docker for local development? There's a much better way, and that would be great to talk about that. And so, what are the next steps? In my mind, I think we need to I think in actually 3 weeks from today, we're going to have a sprint on Website 1. So we're going to have an entire week where we're just going to be dedicated, and whoever wants to join in as a volunteer that's already an active member of Agile Ventures, or maybe some or all of you in this room perhaps, can come and be a part of that, and we can look at contributing to open source and moving things forward, and have a cleanup, because I think that it seems like especially with open source, where people and when you're working with volunteers, it seems like you need to be able to have a period of time where you look at things and you analyze, like, are we actually using this, and can we make these things better, things more performant, and that kind of thing. Cool. So that was my talk. I still have a couple minutes left, and thank you everyone for listening. Thank you. Thank you. So, how to get involved? I think I already told you a little bit about that. This is some of the information, like Facebook. Really? People still using Facebook? I don't have it. I have a Twitter actually, but my Twitter handle is like Matthew 25647321, something like this, so I didn't put it up there. But the best way to get a hold of me is on Slack. You can email me as well if you'd like, and I do have like some actual paper flyers as well. Like, I know that's kind of like not in style anymore, but if you'd like to grab one of those, or just find us there, and you're welcome to join us as we do more, contribute to more open source projects, or put your own project there, and let's do some pair programming together. Thank you.